Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to the podcast. In our last episode, we talked about the vision with the heart, and we also talked about the transcendence of God's essence, meaning that God is above all intelligence, above all imagination, above all thought. And we also talked about the role of the Imams as the organs and the vehicles of divine attributes. And we talked about the crucial distinction between the hidden, unknowable essence of God and his manifested aspect through the Imams. Today, we're going to move into what I consider one of the most profound and, frankly, one of the most neglected areas of early Imamite doctrine, which is the actual theology of the vision of God. And I want to say at the very beginning, what Amir-Moezzi does in this section is truly remarkable. He doesn't just present the Imamite position on whether God can be seen. He shows us that this doctrine has actually two phases that complement each other, and that virtually all prior scholarship, including the Usuli school, has focused only on one of those phases, while completely ignoring the other. And the result of that has been a fundamental distortion of what the Imams actually taught. So let's get into it. Now, the question of whether God can be seen, the ru'ya, is one of the most debated topics in the entire history of Islamic theology. It occupies, as Amir-Moezzi notes, countless pages of Muslim theological writing. The Ash'aris, which is a Sunni theological school, they affirmed the possibility of seeing God, at least in the hereafter. The Mu'tazila, another theological school, denied it categorically. The Hanbalis had their own positions. Every theological school had their own ideas, and the debates were fierce, touching on questions of God's corporeality, whether he had a body or not, his transcendence, the meaning of the Quranic verses about seeing God, and the nature of the vision of God in paradise. All of this are highly debated areas of theology. But here's what Amir-Moezzi highlights, and this is crucial. The Imamite position is distinctive, not because it simply falls on one side or the other of this debate, but because it does something entirely different. It goes beyond speculative theological reasoning, beyond kalam, to arrive at what he describes as a lived, contemplative, and direct interior experience. What does lived mean? Lived means something that you live with. It's a living thing. It's a direct experience. And this is not abstract philosophy, and neither is it dialectical argumentation. This is a doctrine rooted in the actual spiritual practice and interior life of the believer, as taught by the Imams themselves in their traditions. And this is where I want to pause and make a small observation. You see, the rationalist school, the Usuli school, over the centuries has increasingly emphasized rational theological discourse, kalam, as a legitimate and even necessary tool for understanding matters of creed and doctrine. But what we find in the actual tradition of the Imams is something far richer and far more profound than what the rationalist theology can produce. The Imams, and when we discuss the hadith of the Imams, we will see that they were not engaging in any abstract philosophical debates about the vision of God. They were describing a spiritual reality, an initiatory experience, something that belongs to the realm of the lived faith. And when we allow speculative reason, the rationalist mind, to take precedence over these traditions, what happens is that we inevitably end up flattening, distorting the doctrine. We lose precisely what makes it special and transformative. Now, the Imamite position, as Amir-Moezzi presents it, is marked by two complementary ideas. And the originality of this position, its genius, really lies in two things. Number one, the central place it gives to the Imam. And number two, it goes beyond speculation into a direct interior experience. Through this two-phase doctrine, we avoid what the traditions call the two traps. Number one, tashbih, assimilationism, which gives God a form, a body, and makes him into something material and conceivable. And the second trap is ta'til, which is agnosticism, that which strips God of all the attributes, making him so utterly unknowable that he becomes effectively irrelevant to the spiritual life of a believer. The Imamite doctrine, as we will see, navigates between these two extremes with extraordinary precision. Let's start with the first phase. The Imams categorically and unambiguously deny the possibility of seeing God with the physical eyes, not only in this world, but also in the hereafter. And this is absolute. There is no question. There is no doubt. There is no double talk or equivocation. It's very clear. Amir-Moezzi brings several powerful traditions to illustrate this. The first is from Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, peace be upon him, who reports from his fathers and the chain going back through the earlier Imams that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, once encountered a man who was praying with his eyes raised to the sky. And the Prophet said to him, "Lower your eyes, for you will not see him." Think about the directness of that. There's no philosophical argument, there's no elaborate theological reasoning, just a clear prophetic statement that you will not see him. Lower your eyes. Then there is another tradition involving a person called Abu Qurra, who was brought to the house of Imam al-Rida, the eighth Imam, peace be upon him. This person, Abu Qurra, raised the claim that God divided hearing and vision between two prophets. Hearing went to Moses and vision went to Muhammad. And this is a position that some Sunni theologians hold, that the Prophet Muhammad actually saw God with his physical eyes during the Miraj, the night ascension. And look at how Imam al-Rida responds. He doesn't engage in abstract philosophical counter-argument. He goes straight to the Quran. He says, who was it that preached divine revelation to the jinn and to men? And then he cites three Quranic verses. Looks cannot reach him, but he can reach looks. They do not encompass him at all with their signs. And third, nothing is of resemblance to him. And then the Imam delivers the decisive blow. Was it not Muhammad who brought these verses? How then could the same prophet say, I have seen God with my eyes, I have encompassed him with my knowledge? God has a human form. That would be a contradiction. And the Imam says, and this is striking, the heretics, the Zanadiqa, cannot accuse the Prophet of contradiction. In other words, to claim that the Prophet saw God with his eyes is to accuse the Prophet of contradicting the very Quran he brought. And it is the Zanadiqa, the heretics, who would want to create such a contradiction. This is a devastating argument, and notice how it's constructed entirely from the Quran and the words of the Imam. There's no need for elaborate rational theology here. The tradition itself contains the complete argument. Then Amir-Moezzi presents another tradition, this one from Imam al-Hadi, the 10th Imam, peace be upon him. Ahmad ibn Ishaq writes to the Imam asking about seeing God, and the Imam responds with what is essentially a philosophical argument embedded within the tradition itself. He explains that visibility, seeing, is only possible when there is transparent air between the seeing subject and the seen object, and when there is light between them. Without these conditions, there can be no vision. But here's the key point: the existence of a common cause of the act of vision between the subject and the object implies a similarity of nature between the two. And similarity of nature with God is tashbih, assimilationism. So to claim that God can be seen with the eyes is to implicitly claim that God shares a nature with created beings, which is heresy. Now, this is remarkable because it shows that the Imams were not engaging in kalam or a speculative discipline. They're simply teaching, guiding, and providing the definitive answer. And this is the difference between the approach to hadith by the classical scholars and the modern rationalist, Usuli approach. For the classical scholars, the Imam's words are the proof, the hujjah. But for the Usuli, the rationalist scholar, the Imam's words are taken as raw material to be processed further through independent, rational methodologies. But the tradition itself is already complete. It already contains the reasoning, and it doesn't need to be supplemented by the independent, rational judgment of a mujtahid. Now we come to the second phase, and this is where things get truly extraordinary. This is where Amir-Moezzi makes his most important contribution in this section, because he shows that the Imamite doctrine doesn't stop at negation. It doesn't simply say God cannot be seen and leaves it at that. That would be pure ta'til, pure agnosticism. Instead, the Imams insistently state that God can be seen with the heart. And let me read you some of these traditions because they are stunning in their spiritual depth. Yaqub ibn Ishaq writes to the 11th Imam, Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, peace be upon him, and asks, how can a servant not seeing his Lord worship the Lord? Think about the profundity of that question. It cuts to the heart of the religious life. If God is absolutely invisible, absolutely beyond perception, then what does worship mean? And how do you worship what you cannot perceive in any way? The Imam responds in his own handwriting. Abu Yusuf, my master and Lord, he whose benefits have honored my ancestors and myself, is too transcendent to be seen. So first, the negation. God is too transcendent to be seen with the eyes. But then Yaqub asks a follow-up. And the Prophet, has he seen the Lord? And the Imam writes back, God, may he be glorified and exalted, has made visible to the heart of his messenger what he has wanted to show of the light of his majesty. So there it is. God made visible to the heart of the Prophet. What exactly did he make visible? He made visible the light of his majesty. Not to the eyes, but to the heart. And not his essence, but the light of his majesty. And we will come back to what that light is in a moment. Then there is another tradition of the fifth Imam, Imam Baqir, peace be upon him. One of the Khawarij. Notice it's a Khariji, somebody outside the Imamite community. He asks the Imam, O Abu Jafar, what do you worship? The Imam says, I worship God Most High. And the Khariji asks, have you seen him? And the Imam replies, he cannot be seen with the eyes, but hearts can see him through the realities of faith. And then he adds, God cannot be known by analogy or apprehended by the senses or compared to humans. He is described by signs, recognized by indices. Pay attention to that phrase, described by signs, recognized by indices. And we're going to come back to that because it's directly connected to the identity of the Imam as the supreme sign, or the symbol of God. And then, this is perhaps the most powerful tradition in this entire section. There is the exchange between a religious scholar, possibly a rabbi, and Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, peace be upon him. The rabbi, the scholar, asks, "O Prince of Believers, do you see the Lord when you devote yourself to worship?" And Imam Ali responds, "Beware, I would not worship a God that I could not see." The commander of the faithful says, "I would not worship a God that I could not see." This is not a statement of ocular, physical vision. This is a statement about the necessity, the absolute necessity of the heart vision for authentic worship. The scholar then asks, "Then how do you see him?" Imam Ali says, "Beware, the eyes cannot see him with a glance. It is rather the hearts that see him through the realities of faith." This tradition, found in Kulaini's Al-Kafi and other major hadith collections, establishes something extraordinary. That vision of God with the heart is not merely possible, it is necessary. And it is, as Amir-Moezzi puts it, one of the most indispensable conditions of true faith. It means you cannot be a true worshipper of God without this heart vision. And this transforms the entire discussion from an abstract theological debate into a matter of a lived spiritual practice, an initiatory experience. Now, I want to pause here and highlight something that Amir-Moezzi does in this section that I think is absolutely vital. He points out that in the compilations of the Imamite traditions, there are chapters dedicated to the first phase, the impossibility of ocular vision. And because these chapters exist as discrete, easily identifiable units, scholars have studied them. And that part of the doctrine has received attention. But, and here's the problem, studying that first phase and omitting the second, as Amir-Moezzi says, results in destroying the equilibrium, neglecting the theological fundamentals, and results in finally suppressing the practical and the initiatory implications. And this is a devastating critique and applies not only to Western academic scholars, but also, I would argue, to much of the later Usuli theological tradition. When you reduce the Imamite position on the vision of God to a simple negation, saying God cannot be seen, you have actually turned it into a simple Mu'tazili position. You have stripped it of everything that makes it distinctively Imamite. And you've removed the Imam from the equation. You've eliminated the spiritual, the contemplative, the initiatory dimension. And you've done so because the details in the hadith about the heart vision are, and Amir-Moezzi acknowledges this, these details are fragmentary, elusive, and dispersed, and throughout an impressive mass of traditions. They don't come neatly packaged in a single chapter. And you have to do the hard work of systematic examination of the hadith compilations to piece the full picture together. So what exactly is seen with the eye of the heart? And this is where the doctrine reaches its most profound and, for many, its most surprising dimension. Amir-Moezzi tells us that what is seen with the eye of the heart is a light, a nur, or more precisely, several modalities of light, anwar, the plural of light. This light is located at the center of the heart, and it is sometimes identified with what Amir-Moezzi calls hero intelligence, aql. If you remember from the previous episodes, 3, 4, and 5, this aql is not the same as reason or intellect. It is much more deep, it's mystical, and it's spiritually charged. Now, Amir-Moezzi uses this same term, hero intelligence, deliberately to distinguish the Imamite concept of aql from the purely rational philosophical concept of the intellect. This is not the akal of the philosophers or the kalam theologians. This is a secret faculty, a luminous reality within the heart of the believer. And the Imam is quoted as saying, the akal, this hero intelligence, in the heart is like a lamp in the center of the house. And it's a beautiful and evocative image. The heart is the house, and at its center, there is a lamp, akal, this secret intelligence that illuminates everything within it. And this akal is the means of vision with the heart. It is the instrument through which the believer sees the manifest aspects of God. Now, how is this possible? Because, and this is the key, the reality of akal is identical to the Imam. Amir-Moezzi lays this out with precision. He reminds us of what was established earlier in the book. Akal is the interior Imam of the believer. The armies of akal, remember the famous tradition of the armies of akal and the armies of jahal, intelligence and ignorance? And the first thing that God created was the akal and the pre-existential light of the Imam. And these are, in the deepest sense, the same thing. We covered this extensively in our previous episodes. The pre-existence and the cosmogonic role of the Imam's light. So when you put all this together, the picture that emerges is really breathtaking. The object of vision with the heart and in the heart is the light of the Imam. The Imam is, as the Quranic expressions applied to him indicate, the supreme symbol, al-Mathal al-Ala, and the greatest sign, al-Ayat al-Kubra, of the revealed God. The Imam is the light of God, and this is why the traditions speak of seeing God with the heart, because what is seen is the light of the Imam, and the Imam is the manifested aspect of God, the vehicle through which the divine attributes become operative and become knowable. Amir-Moezzi cites two extraordinary traditions that make this identification very explicit. The first, the light of the Imam in the hearts of the faithful is more brilliant than that of the brilliant day star, the sun. Think about that. The light of the Imam present in the heart of the true believer is more brilliant than the sun. And this is not a metaphor. In the cosmological and the spiritual framework of early Imamism, this is a description of a reality, spiritual reality. The second tradition, the rank of the heart within the body is the same as the rank of the Imam among those who owe their obedience to him. Meaning that the heart governs the body just as the Imam governs the community of the faithful. And this parallel is not merely analogical. It points to a deep structural reality. The Imam is, in a real sense, the heart of the community, just as the light of the Imam is, in a real sense, present in the heart of the individual believer. This is what the classical scholars understood intuitively, and what the Hadith literature makes explicit when we read it with care and comprehensiveness. The Imam is not merely a political leader or a jurisprudential authority. The Imam is a cosmic reality whose light is present within the very being of the faithful believer. And the spiritual life consists in its deepest dimension of the contemplative vision of that light within the heart. Amir-Moezzi beautifully illustrates the two phases of this doctrine through two speeches of the sixth Imam, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, peace be upon him. In the first speech, Imam Sadiq is commenting on chapter 7 of the Quran, verse 143, which concerns Moses' request to see God. The famous verse where Moses says, "My Lord, show yourself to me that I may look upon you." And God responds that Moses will never see him. The Imam says, in relation to the Lord, three things are impossible for servants: manifestation, tajalli, which literally means theophany, and knowledge, marifa, knowledge in the most complete sense. For no eye can see him, no heart can reach him, no intellect can know him completely. This is the first phase, absolute negation regarding the divine essence. No eye, no heart, no intellect can reach God in his essence. Notice that even the heart is included in this negation when it comes to the essence itself. The essence is beyond everything. But then in the second speech, the same Imam is asked about the raptures, the ghashya, that the Prophet experienced when revelation descended upon him. And the Imam says it was when there was no longer anyone between God and him. And Amir-Moezzi notes that this should be understood as the absence of the angel of revelation, meaning that this was a direct experience, not mediated by Jibreel. It was when God showed himself to him. So in the first speech, God cannot be seen, cannot be reached, cannot be known, speaking of the essence. In the second speech, God shows himself to the Prophet, speaking of the manifested aspect, the revealed God, his sign, his symbol, and his organ. And these two speeches, when taken together, perfectly encapsulate the Imamite doctrine. They're not contradictory. They address two different planes of existence. The essence remains forever beyond, but the manifested God, the God who wants to be known, who created creation so that he might be known, that God is accessible through the heart, through the light of the Imam that dwells within the heart of the faithful. Now, the final piece of this puzzle is the question of who can experience this vision with the heart. And the answer that the traditions give is the mu'min, the faithful believer. And only through the realities of faith, haqa'iq al-Iman. But here, and this is where Amir-Moezzi's sensitivity to the technical vocabulary of the Imamite traditions is so valuable. We need to understand what Iman, faith, means in Imamite technical terminology. It does not simply mean belief in God and the Prophet in a general sense. In the lexicon of the Imams, Iman means specifically the Imamite religion in the sense of the esoteric, the batin, the hidden dimension of the prophetic message. And what constitutes the core of the esoteric dimension are two things in particular. Walaya, which is the love, the devotion, and the allegiance to the Imam, and taslim, which is submission to the Imam, and his terrestrial manifestation, the historical Imams. Similarly, when the traditions speak of the mu'min, the faithful, they mean in Imamite technical usage, it means the true Shias, specifically those who have been initiated by the Imams. And this is not a general inclusive category. It is a very specific initiated community. The logic of the doctrine is complete and self-contained. God in his essence is forever invisible and unknowable. But God in his manifested aspect, the Imam, can be seen with the heart. And the instrument of this vision is aql, sacred intelligence, which is itself identical in its deepest reality to the Imam himself. The prerequisite for this vision is Iman, faith, which means walaya and taslim to the Imam. And the object of this vision is the light of the Imam present in the heart of the initiated believer. Everything circles back to the Imam. The Imam is the means, the object, and the condition of the vision of God. Without the Imam, there is no knowledge of God, there's no worship of God, and there's no vision of God. And this is what Imam Hussein meant when he said that knowledge of God for the people of every age is knowledge of the Imam to whom they owe obedience. And so what Amir-Moezzi has done in this section and throughout this book, as a matter of fact, is to recover this original, integral Imamite doctrine from beneath the layers of rationalist, elaborations that have obscured it. He has gone back to the sources, to the actual traditions, and he has shown us a vision of early Shiism that is far richer, far more spiritually profound, and far more coherent than what the later theological developments have sometimes allowed us to see. So let me bring this all together. What we've covered today is the Imamite doctrine of the vision of God, as presented through the actual traditions of the Imams, and recovered by Amir-Moezzi in his meticulous scholarship. This doctrine has two complementary phases. First, God in his essence cannot be seen, not with the eyes, not in this world, not in the hereafter. And any claim to the contrary leads to tashbih, assimilationism, to the heretical implication that God shares a nature with the created beings. Second, God in his manifested aspect, his light, his signs, and his symbols, can and must be seen with the heart. What is seen is the light of the Imam, who is the supreme symbol, the greatest sign of the revealed God. And the instrument of this vision is aql, sacred intelligence, which is itself identical to the Imam in its deepest reality. And the prerequisite is Iman, faith, understood as walaya and taslim to the Imam. These two phases together constitute the complete Imamite position that avoids both the trap of tashbih and the trap of ta'til. It's a position that is simultaneously theologically rigorous and also spiritually transformative. Prior scholarship, as Amir-Moezzi has shown, has typically studied only the first phase and ignored the second, thereby destroying the equilibrium of the doctrine and suppressing its initiatory transformative implications. And I would add that the dominance of the Usuli school's rationalist methodology has contributed to this imbalance by creating an intellectual environment in which the esoteric, the contemplative dimension of the Imams' teachings are systematically undervalued. What Amir-Moezzi's scholarship demonstrates is that it demonstrates the necessity of taking the full corpus of the Imam's traditions seriously and reading them holistically and allowing them to reveal the complete integral doctrine that the Imams intended to transmit to us. And I want to remind you again that everything mentioned in this episode and all the episodes in the series have detailed references to the Hadith corpus, which you can look up in Amir-Moezzi's book. In our next episode, we will continue moving through chapter 2 and explore further dimensions of the Imam's role in early Shia cosmology and spirituality. Until then, I encourage you to reflect on what we've discussed today, particularly the statement of Imam Ali, who said, "I would not worship a God that I cannot see." And what does it mean to see God with the heart? And what does it mean that the light of the Imam is more brilliant than the sun? And that this light dwells within the heart of the faithful. These are not abstract theological propositions. They are invitations to a living spiritual reality. Thank you for listening. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.